one thing that I found out with theaters, they don't watch your movie. I don't really think they care. They just care about getting butts in the seats and making money, which is interesting.
Hello, welcome to the Texas Indie Film Podcast. I am Rob Mabry, writer, director, and producer of The Legend of El Chupacabra. Today on the show, we've got CJ Goodwyn. CJ is a filmmaker from San Antonio, Texas. He's made 4 feature films in the last 12 years, and his most recent film, Sherlock Holmes, Mayor of the Night, is in theaters now. CJ, welcome to the show.
Yeah, Rob, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I've been looking forward to talking with you. I think you've got a lot to share about filmmaking and especially distribution. I'm excited to get to that topic. But why don't we start and tell us a little bit about your journey as a filmmaker? How did it all start for you?
Sure. So it's about, I guess, about 12 years ago. Really, how I got started, my mom and I, we go every Thanksgiving to watch movies. It's sort of our tradition. And we just happened to watch two or three more independent type horror films, although it's still a big studio, which we can discuss later if you want. But they had probably at least 20 or $30 million budgets. And I just remember sitting there like, I feel like I could do this and possibly do it better. My naiveness kicking in. And my mom, being who she was, she's like, well, if you think you can, why don't you do it? And I'm like, well,
Yeah,
maybe.
mister. You get out there and make a movie.
I know. So being naive about it, I went home, I wrote a script, and then 3 months later, I started filming my first featured film. It was I only spent maybe $1,000 making it. I used Final Cut Pro to edit. My brothers and my friends, and then just family and friends' like houses and landscapes that they owned. So really, all the money just kind of went to, I think, camera rentals, and then just us doing it, and and we did it. I learned a lot on that first film. It was pretty wild, pretty crazy. That was basically my film school. I didn't go to film school. That's just kind of how I jumped in and learned. I didn't do a short film before that. I just jumped in. I was like, I'm gonna make a feature, and I did. I made one. There's definitely a lot of issues with that first film, but I went through it. That's kind of how I got started.
So, just scrappy, like jumping right in with both feet. What did you learn through that process?
Man, I really just everything, including just how hard it truly is to make a featured film. Anything that will go wrong or will go wrong, basically. Like even my brother, he tore his Achilles playing soccer, and he was one of the actors in the movie. Wasn't on set, thank God, but
Yeah.
so I had to learn how to still use him in the film and make it look like he's still walking around throughout the house. So I learned very early on how to do movie magic, the camera work. And that actually worked, for anyone that's seen the film, which not many have. You can't tell, that he's not walking around. I was pretty proud of that. Um, and then just learning that everyone has different personalities. You have to manage everyone a little bit differently. Um, all those things, the psychological effect that it has on you, and the stress that comes with making a film, and I mean, really, just all of that. And but with that, I kind of caught the bug, and I was like, I can do this. I did this first one, basically went through film school hell, and I was like, I'm gonna come back. Let me try again now that I know what needs to be done. Now that I know I need to have really good audio and better storytelling and better actors and just everything, right? And so that's what I did. I mean, that's kind of what I learned on the first one. It's just, you know, um, I was naive. I was young. I was like, I feel like I can do this and make a great movie. It wasn't a great film, but I did make it. And I was proud of that. The start to finish. The people that were on the film had a great time, and for a lot of them, it was just bucket list because it was like friends and family. It's not something they want to do, as a career. But I think after that first one, I was like, yeah, man, I think I want to do this full time. So I really started studying more, researching more, getting better equipment, better tools. So I moved from Final Cut to Adobe Pro. Started learning that avenue, and I really just dove in, man. I people ask, how do you study? How do you research? Like for me, when it comes to the filmmaking side, I just watch movies. I watch the greats. I watch how they tell the story through a lens. How they don't have to have dialogue in every scene to tell a movie. It means all these things, and that's kind of how I learned at least the storytelling aspect of it. And then the technical side, I just started doing it. I started editing myself, learning those ropes. Started doing cinematography to learn that. Started lighting rooms to learn that. And then to really just research to find the best audio equipment I could find for the budget that I had. Because I preach that all the time. You already know this, but audio is everything. If your audio is not good, it doesn't matter what you do with your movie. No one's gonna watch it. So all those things I learned on my first film, and I want to say since then, all my films have gotten better. Each one I feel like I get better and better at. Across the board. You know, storytelling, actors, cinematography, producing, getting money, all that stuff. Um, so I continue to go in the right direction. So that's a good.
Yes. So your first two films were horror films, and then you switched things up and made a Roman epic in the Texas Hill Country. Period piece, I think a cast of 100 or somewhere thereabouts. Tell me about that decision. You know, you hear all the time, right? If you're an indie filmmaker, you need to make a movie that's like one location, four actors. You did not take that approach at all. So, what gave you the courage to do something so ambitious?
Yeah, I think the first film that was definitely like just keep it small and learn. The second film, called Jackson,
Hmm.
which I'm gonna do a re-release of that actually pretty soon. So that'll be out on Film Hub and hit some of these channels. So people that haven't got a chance to see my second feature, they'd be able to do that. But even in Jackson, I upped that up to I had probably about 15 extras, um, and then probably about 10 cast members. So I went from about 5 to 25, and then I had a little bit bigger crew with Jackson. Actually, that's not even accurate. I'm sorry. I think I had about 45 extras in Jackson because I had two scenes where I had about 15 people, and they're all different. So after doing Jackson, I'm like, all right, well, I got 45 extras for this horror film. I think I can do that for this Roman movie that I wanted to do. And for anyone that knows me, um, I just want to make films that I want to see. I think I tell filmmakers that all the time. Make sure you're making the movie that you want to see. And I always wanted to do a Roman film, from all the way back in the days, and then obviously Gladiator. You know, uh, Braveheart's not Roman, but it has sort of the same feel. Just stuff like that. It's something I've always wanted to do. And I have some film colleagues here in the Hill Country, that have land, and I was out on their acreage, and he's like, "Yeah, man, if you want to use my family's property, you're more than welcome to." And they had like 1,600 acres, and yeah, his name's Derek Meyer. He was in Eyes of a Roman as one of the actors as well. And we went and scouted that land and just found some really good battlefield areas and tent areas for Marcus Crassus and all these things. And that was actually during COVID. So during COVID, a lot of stuff got shut down for inside filming, and all this movie was all shot pretty much outside. We have one tent scene with Crassus, but the rest of it's outside. And so it was kind of just like the perfect storm, really, in my mind. Like, well, if we can't film inside, let's go outside. And so the Roman film kind of just took off from there. Um, I had a feeling that actors would enjoy to come on to the Roman movie, um, to either be a Roman or a barbarian and do a lot of the fighting stuff. I think as children we love doing that, and if you're an actor, I don't think you ever kind of grow out of that. It's something that's just fun. So I had a feeling that we'd be able to do that. I took it very seriously. Obviously, I brought in Clarissa De Hoya. She's a fight choreographer. We had a lot of conversations, and then we did about 3 weeks of basically fight auditioning, and then once they got on board, rehearsing. So everyone knew what to do before we got on the set, and it was a lot of fun. And I think we had a total around 140 people actually, for Eyes of a Roman, and yeah, I just funny enough, the hill country kind of looks similar to the Roman landscape over there during that time period. It's not 100%, but it's close. Um, and I didn't really care. Like, oh, cedar trees. I'm like, yeah, I don't care. It's a low budget. I wanted to do it, so I did it. And it was just another great experience learning new aspects of filmmaking that I have not didn't have from horror. So now I know how to do fight sequences. Now I know how to do slow motion. Those are all things that I implemented in Eyes of a Roman, which I didn't have in my first two movies.
Yeah, so as a director, when you're working and you have such a large production, like what's your advice to directors who may be pursuing something, that ambitious?
Um, I think, pre-production is very important. I think if you're gonna go for a really big film, and if we're just gonna use Eyes of Roman as an example, which is a big film for low budget, no budget type movies, um, pre-production's everything. You got to make sure you have the right department heads helping you out, that are all in, which is easier said than done in the indie world. But you have to find those type of people that believe in the project, they believe in you, and they're all in. So we had weekly meetings for 6 months. All the departments. Wardrobe, first ADs. You know, fight choreographers, props. All that stuff. And you just have to build that team up. Everyone knows what you're trying to make. You give everyone an opportunity to shine. Kind of let them run a little bit once you discuss what you want. And it's just constant follow up and communication. I think communication is very important when you're making anything. But even on this scale, everyone had to understand their roles and they had to follow through. So you got to hold people accountable, make sure they're doing their jobs, and it's just night and day, man. I think any film is, but it just takes a lot of prep work, and we did that. You know, we did prep. We were out there a lot. You know, um, Going over the sequences and the scenes myself, knowing what shots you wanted to take. So that way, like the day of, although you have all those extras, I think we only had them out there for maybe one weekend. And so you kind of have to know what you want to film, and everyone has to know their choreography. So that was very important. And again, pre-work, man. I think the more you can do early on, the better. I think sometimes filmmakers, um, they can jump into films too quickly, and they don't have all their ducks in a row, and then they end up scrambling. And even if you have all your ducks in a row, I think filmmakers know this. stuff always happens on film sets, and you have to be able to pivot and go a different direction. And it's no different with myself. You know, we weren't expecting rain one day, and so we got rain one day, and so then we had to use water hoses to create rain when we came back the following day. Yeah, you just figure out ways to keep that continuity and make it work the best you can. So,
Yeah, what was the most challenging day that you had during that shoot?
so Eyes of a Roman, I think the most challenging day and probably the day that haunts me is the crucifix day, where myself, because I acted in this movie too, and probably like 6 or 7 other people, we had to get up on those poles and sort of reenact, what crucifixion looks like back then on the Appian Way. And it wasn't very comfortable. And we had,
Yeah, I can imagine.
you know, there's a long sequence at the end of the film where I'm up there with no help almost for 5 minutes, and you just have to pretend you're not breathing. It's very painful. And we did that along with a lot of other fight sequences. And I think even my end scene in the movie, which is a very emotional moment. And we shot all of that, took all day. And at the very end of that night, we were filming, I guess, the last scene. And it's near fire. And my DP got too close. And the fire hurt the card.
Mm,
And we lost all the footage.
no, no.
So that entire day was gone. And I went home and I tried reaching out to those companies to find a way to save it. Nope, it got fried. Couldn't save it. So on a day where I had, I don't know, 50 extras out there and emotional scenes and just torturing myself physically, it was gone. And so I had to let the team know what happened, which was really brutal.
Yeah, that's a gut punch.
Um, which which was even worse was everyone, and whether they felt like this or not, who knows? But I like to think they did. Everyone was super nice and humble about it, and just encouraging. No one said anything negative, and they said, "We're ready to come back when you need us." And so I was, I got choked up a little bit seeing that because it was tough, man. It was so hard. And then going back, having to redo those scenes that were emotional scenes, physically painful. I could even do it. Like we got back to the pole and I'm trying to do it again for 5 minutes and I couldn't. Like my body wouldn't let me and my mind was like gone. Like I went through it so much the first time. I feel like it'd be like asking Leo to do the Revenant again and he's like, "Nah, man, I'm
That's
good.
okay.
I'm not jumping in that freezing water again. I'm good." That's kind of what it felt like. So we found out other ways to kind of cheat it a little bit and help me out. The emotional scenes, I couldn't quite get back to where I was the first time because I think for a lot of those emotional scenes, if you're not like a professional actor, and I'm not, you have to use things in your life that can take you to a dark place or make you cry or whatever. And I couldn't get back there. I used it up, so it was really hard for me on the acting side to get back to that moment. So that was tough, man. That was the hardest, most painful, worst moment of my filmmaking career. I hope it doesn't happen to anyone. And
Yeah.
it was brutal, man.
All right. Well, sorry to put you through it
Yeah.
again, but yeah, that's filmmaking, right? Like, nothing ever goes exactly as planned.
It happens, and I think that was like our last weekend of filming too. Like we were gonna be done, and it happens. Like people talk about backups and backups, and I completely agree. And but you're out in the middle of nowhere. We didn't really have a chance to back up the files, and we didn't have any issues. My camera holds two SD cards, and it just fried both of them, man. And I was like, well,
Terrible. All right. Well, there's a lesson. Don't get your camera too
yeah,
close to the fire.
pretty much,
Yeah.
man. That was really rough. That was rough.
So, talk a little bit about the release of Eyes of a Roman. What did you do with the film, and how was it distributed and received?
Sure. So I think for Eyes of a Roman, um, I screened it at three or four different theaters, which was the first time of me doing that. But they weren't movie theaters; they're actually they were stage theaters. So like in Kerrville, there's the Callow Theater. I showed it in Fredericksburg. I showed it at Schreiner, which is my university. And so that was really the first time that I was able to do something like that. I had a red carpet event. I think around 300 people arrived and watched it, which was really cool. That was a lot of fun. And I wasn't quite ready for the theatrical journey, which Sherlock went through. So after doing those, I was just researching all the time about finding the best distribution path. And for me, after looking through the horror stories and just how challenging distribution can be and all these things, I found Film Hub and saw a lot of great testimonials from other directors, reached out to other directors that used it, said they didn't have any issues. They pay when they say they're going to pay, all that stuff. And so I went on there, researched it. They were doing 80-20 split, 80% to the filmmaker. All you have to do is upload your film, and then those channels that they have agreements with, their screening companies for those specific channels watch your movie, and they decide whether they want it.
Hmm.
Now, for Film Hub, you're almost guaranteed that you'll get on Tubi and Amazon Prime Video. Those are their two biggest uh, channels, at least at that time. Now they've gotten more channels, which we can talk later about. But at that time, those were like the two heavy hitters they had. So I did that, and then I wouldn't say within 1 month of me uploading my film, it came out on Tubi and Amazon, and we were on the Action Tubi page for about 2 months in the top 10.
Nice.
Yeah, I did pretty well on Tubi, and it was a slow crawl getting other channels. So I want to say in the first 3 months of it being on Film Hub, I was probably on maybe three or four channels. Now I'm probably on 20 because they have different channels from different countries. It's not just the U.S., it's territories across the world. Some channels that Americans have never heard of, but they're on those channels. And they continue to grow. They continue to add more channels. I mentioned it the other day. They got like HBO and Hulu and Showtime and Peacock now, which they didn't have when I put Eyes of Roman on there. So that's what I did with Eyes of a Roman. So
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Sherlock Holmes' Mirror of the Night. Tell us a bit about the film.
sure. So with Sherlock Holmes, basically what I wanted to do was if Sherlock Holmes was a real person, and if you speak to Sherlockians, they'll say that he was a real person. What type of life would he really have? If he's a true hero and he's helping solving these cases with murderers and rapists and really bad people, um, what does that look like? To that person's psyche. He doesn't always win. Back then, he was doing drugs, alcohol pretty heavily. And what does that do to you after 50 years of working on all these cases? Not only just to you, but the people in your life that surround you. What type of effect does that have on you? And so that was really the heart of it. I just kind of want to tell what true heroes kind of go through, and use the Sherlock Holmes character and his universe with the characters that are already there, including adding some new original ones that I've created for the movie, and just going on that ride. And that's really what it's about. And so I think people that have seen the film, they will say it's pretty dark. It's PTSD, you know, psychological type stuff in the horror genre for Sherlock Holmes. So
Yeah, were you concerned at all about? I mean, I've seen the film. It's not, Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes, right? It is a very, dark and emotional film. Were you concerned about the reception that the film might received from the fan base of Sherlock Holmes?
I definitely had conversations with Les Best, who plays Sherlock Holmes. Him and I are good friends, and he's been on all of my featured films. We have really good working relationship as well as just a friendship. So we talked about it a lot, and I told him from the beginning that, I'm pretty sure half the Sherlock fan base isn't going to like the movie. Um, that was my guess. To my surprise, a lot of the Sherlockians that we've come across on the tour, most of them have actually enjoyed it, in their own way, because we are touching on the real life factor of the human side of Sherlock, not a fake Sherlock, a real Sherlock. And so they've really enjoyed that adaptation. But I remember when we were making the movie, yeah, we kind of went back and forth a little bit, like, is this going to be too much? Is it going to resonate? All those things. But in the end, and as I tell filmmakers too, Sherlock's been done so many times. In my mind, this was the only Sherlock story that hasn't really been told before, and I didn't want to waver from that. And I always tell everyone, you're not going to make everyone happy. There's just no way. So tell the film that you want to tell. There'll be people that love it, and there'll be people that do not. But it's like that with any movie. And with that said, since you've seen the movie, we definitely still give a lot of, I think, great nods to the classic books, to Arthur Conan Doyle. I didn't want to disrespect the character or Doyle's work in any way, um, but I did want to show a much darker take on it. And I've had some people say that they believe Arthur Conan Doyle would have really liked this take of the Sherlock character because it fits a lot of some of his short stories that he wrote. And so that's been nice to hear. But to kind of answer your question, yeah, there was a little bit of concern making it, but overall, my fears went away pretty quickly. If you've seen the movie, I went for it basically on the darker side of a Sherlock film, and I didn't waver from that. And it's just part one. Part two is really no different. So
Yeah, that's you mentioned part two. So I think initially you had planned to make one film, and at some point realized that you had two films. So tell us a little bit about that decision. Like how did you realize, like, maybe this is not just a single film?
yeah, I think I had sort of an idea about halfway through filming. Um, we took 1 or 2 months off in the summer just because it's too hot to film in those houses. Obviously you don't have AC running when you're filming for audio purposes, and there was no AC in those houses anyway. If you've seen the movie, those houses were built in like 1901.
The
Um,
joys of filming in Texas.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, so I kind of had an idea there, but it became full circle really when I got into the editing room and I started piecing things together. And I got to about the hour and 40-minute mark, and I'm like, you know, I think I may have two films here. And you just kind of keep editing, hit the 2 hour mark, and you're like, yep, I definitely have two.
How long was the script?
I mean, it really wasn't that long. That's what's interesting to me about it. But you've seen part one. There's probably at least 25 minutes of the movie where there is no dialogue. It's just sort of music and his, you know, hallucination type nightmare stuff. Um, I would say the script was maybe, I don't know, 90 pages, which, people say, well, that's only like an hour and a
That
half.
would
I'm
be an
like,
hour and
yeah.
a half movie. What's going on?
So I'm like, yeah, I know. It's kind of weird, right? And then
Yeah.
like you kind of go back and you start looking like, well, there's some slow-mo stuff and there's some horror stuff with no dialogue. And of course, when you write that on your page, it's like, all right, horror scene here. So, instead of being like one page of horror was really more probably like 25 pages of horror, basically. And but it is what it is. I actually had a Sherlockian recently watch it um, that liked the film, um, but they're also a film critic, and so they had some words about the editing and maybe like tightening it up where you could have made one movie. And it's like, well, first off, that was never going to happen. Like even if I took out 15 minutes, I still wouldn't have enough time to make one film with everything that I'm telling. Part two is still going to be at least an hour and a half to 2 hours long. That's
Wow.
that's how much I have, and so it's never going to be that. So with part one, and you've seen the movie, but I really wanted to make sure that people understood the agony of what depression, um, drugs, all that has an effect on you. Like I didn't want to let up. Sometimes films they just kind of go right over it. Like, okay, he's a drug
Yeah.
addict, and then a minute later,
It's the first act, and then
yeah,
bam, he's like, "Oh, I'm good to go. Let's go solve some crimes."
100%.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do that. There were some audience members that wanted that. They wanted to see their hero come back faster. And I was like, well, that's more part two. Like I didn't want that for part one. I wanted to show how brutal it really is, not just for Sherlock, but also for the caretaker. The person that has to help this person heal. So for me, it was much more of that. I've had a lot of people say they really loved what I did. They resonate with it. It's 100% true. Everything that I've shown, that's what you go through. All those things. And then I've had other people said it was a bit much. Maybe we could have cut some of out. But that's when I go back to you're never going to make everyone happy. So just make what you want to make and show what you want to show. So.
So for Sherlock, you were the cinematographer. You operated the camera. I think that was different from your approach on Eyes of a Roman. So what made you decide that you wanted to be hands on with the camera, and how did you prepare for that, and why did you take that approach?
There's a couple factors. I knew for Sherlock Holmes, although I acted in Eyes of a Roman, which I enjoyed, and I'm going to be acting in some other films down the road. For Sherlock, I knew I wasn't going to act in Sherlock. Um, I knew I wasn't good enough to be an actor in that movie. So I kind of opened up another door of like, well, maybe I could do cinematography for this one. With all of my films, although I've enjoyed working with my DPs, I never really got 100% of what I wanted visually. It can be hard on those relations trying to communicate and get exactly what you want. So for Sherlock, knowing that I was going to be in these really small houses, although in the film they may look a little bigger, but when you're in there, they're small. I wasn't going to have a lot of room. There's a lot of times where we're doing the scenes where it's just me and the boom mic only. No one else was in those rooms besides the actors because there's just no room. And so knowing that, and knowing haven't been able to get the visual that I really always wanted, I just wanted to take it on my shoulders and be like, look, I didn't want to have anyone basically to blame. I was like, if you take it on yourself and you're the cinematographer and it doesn't come out the way you want it, it's your fault, no one else's. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to take it on, to get the visuals that I wanted. I knew the film was going to be mainly handheld and tripod, which is all stuff that any cinematographer can do with practice. Um, so that's what I did. I practiced for about 4 to 6 months. I already had some camera knowledge, obviously, but I did do some practicing, just learning the lenses, learning how I wanted to pull focus, in and out of focus for the hallucinations, all these things. And if the people that have seen the film, all the in and out focus movements are on purpose, and most of those are with Sherlock. When he's drinking or doing drugs or talking. And then when you watch the film, anything on Lestrade or Doyle sitting at the table, they're in focus. There is no in and out of focus. It's just clear tripod type work, things like that. And those are things that storytellers like ourselves know how to use the camera to help tell a movie. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've gotten a lot of compliments about really love the cinematography, really love the cinematography. It's like, well, I didn't do anything special, to be honest. I just used the lenses and the camera, I believe, the right way to tell this story. Um, and that's basically the reason why I took it on, man. I wanted to be like, if it didn't turn out the way that I wanted it, it was because of me, and no one else. So I took it on my shoulders. I'm glad I did. It was a great experience. I really enjoyed doing the cinematography. My friend Les is like, now, like, how are you not going to be able to do cinematography now moving forward on your films? I'm like, I don't know, man. Yeah, every film's a little different.
Yeah,
With this film, I could handle the cinematography. At least in my mind, I felt like I could, and I believe I did. Yeah, I'm happy with the way it looks.
you should be. There's a lot of beautiful shots in it, and I thought it worked really well. So congrats.
Yeah, and I'll be the first to tell you, like, not every shot's perfect, and there's some lighting things that could have been better. But
Sure.
low budget, no budget films, and you do the best you can with what you have. One thing I love to tell people is like, well, I only had two soft boxes lighting my scenes, and then I used candlelight for everything else. And every once in a while, I would use your light because you let me borrow it for a little bit. But that was really it, man. And that's what's cool about it. So when people watch it, they're like, "Man, it looks, like Hollywood style and really well done." I'm like, "Yeah, that was two soft boxes." And
Nice.
for a lot of people, they can't wrap their head around it because I feel like sometimes we don't need all these bells and whistles. If you know how to make a film and use the tools you have, you can do a lot with a little. So,
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about distribution. You have had a theatrical run with Mare of the Night, I think 17 theaters or somewhere around there across Texas and the Midwest. Take us through the strategy for a theatrical release, why it was the right time and how did you pull it off?
but yeah, so I think before I made Sherlock, I knew I wanted to show it in theaters. That was my next step. And so I was going to make sure that happened. I was just dead set, like, there's no way I'm not going to show this in movie theaters. And so from the beginning, while making Sherlock, before Sherlock, I was just researching, figuring out how to do these things, starting to network, reaching out to people, going to other filmmakers, movies that are in theaters. I think we're lucky here in San Antonio. Brad at City Based Cinemas. He helps filmmakers a lot, I saw a lot of other people's indie films in that theater. And so I definitely connected with Brad pretty early, just to see if I could do the same. And of course, he was like, yes, you can. And so I knew that I was going to be able to show my film in that theater, which was great to know. And that was my first point of contact, basically. From there, though, I didn't stop. It's like, okay, we got this theater. How can we get into more theaters? So you start researching, distribution, booking companies, things of that nature. For the most part, they didn't really want to touch my film, because I am a low budget type indie filmmaker. Proof is in the pudding, right? So they kind of need a little bit more proof. Um, but I didn't let that stop me either. So then I just started reaching out to theaters directly. And then we started finding that the movie theaters will welcome indie films, without having to have a booking agent. I was like, well, that's nice to know. And so, like, while we were filming, we were already starting to reach out to certain theaters, staying in contact with them. Basically, like, yeah, we'd love to have your film. Once it's done, let us know, and we can circle back and get you booked. So we kind of had an idea that we are going to have a good chance once the movie was done to show it in theaters. So knowing that, that was great. And basically, how I got started, we started with City Base here in San Antonio. Brad said, I'll give you one night and one showtime. And if you can sell that out, I'll give you another one. And I picked the day in January. January is typically very slow for Hollywood type films. I didn't want to have to compete with Mission Impossible or a Marvel movie. So we did that, which obviously is very smart. So if you're a filmmaker, make sure you do that. That's my opinion. And I let my team know, hey guys, on this day, he's going to put it on his website. If we sell this out in 24 hours, he'll give us another one. So we all need to, cast and crew, family and friends, buy our tickets for this premiere day. He released it, 24 hours, we sold out. Brad said, congratulations, here's another showtime. We sold that out in another 24 hours. So within 48 hours, we basically sold close to 300 seats, 2 different screenings on a Friday night for the red carpet premiere at City Base Cinemas. By doing that, he then gave me the weekend. Now, granted, this was taking place the third week of November. My film wasn't coming out till end of January. So that caught the eye of the booking company that books films for city-based cinemas. So they reached out to me, and they have a lot of theaters that they work with. For us, they also work for Santikos here in San Antonio. Santikos is the biggest chain we have, which was great. And so I spoke with them. They were able to give me 2 theaters, the Palladium and Casablanca. I made a deal with them. Their deal is a lot different. With them, I only got 35% of the ticket cut, because they took 15%. With Brad, because he helps indie filmmakers here in San Antonio, he gave 100% ticket sales. He just wanted concessions. He definitely does not have to do that. He did that just to help the indie filmmaker.
Yeah, that is not typical.
No.
But Brad is a huge supporter of indie film and especially Texas filmmakers. So yeah, he did the same thing for me for Chupacabra. I had my film in that particular theater, but just so everyone knows, like that's not normal.
It's not. No, it's not. I think what's normal, or at least what I have found, it's a 50-50 ticket split, with theaters. That's what I've been doing. So all the theaters I went to besides Santikos and besides City Base has been a 50-50 ticket split. And I just offer that right off the bat. I don't, try to get greedy and negotiate, can I get like an 80-20 or things like that?
Yeah.
It's like, no, let's just do 50-50. I'm traveling with the movie, so I can do Q&A. I can be there, um, and they like that a little bit too. One thing that I found out with theaters, they don't watch your movie. I don't really think they care. They just care about getting butts in the seats and making money, which is interesting.
That's
You know, that
crazy.
I know it was very interesting. Like, you want to screen my film? No, we're
What's wrong
good.
with you? Why don't you want to see my movie?
All right. Yeah, it's very weird. I mean, to me, it was weird. I was like, you don't want to know what's going to be playing in your film? Like, I don't understand. But they didn't care, man. And I tell filmmakers, Monday through Wednesday are basically the days. Thursday can happen as well. Weekends are pretty tough. They like to use weekends, obviously, for their big marquee type movies. Unless you can almost basically guarantee that you got a big number coming. If you're able to show, like, hey, I'm going to have 100 people on a Sunday if we can get it. Here's the proof, however you want to show your proof, then there's wiggle room there. Um, but that's how I got into theaters. Yeah.
Yeah, so when you're approaching, theaters, like what does that look like? And are you emailing them? Do you share a poster? Like, how would you recommend approaching an independent theater about getting your film screened?
Yeah, I think every theater, for the most part, has a, direct contact email that you can reach out to, whether it's their manager or corporate. So myself and my team of about 3 or 4 people, we would email the theaters directly. We set up an email. Everyone had the same one. Synopsis, posters, stills, trailer. IMDb. Once we started getting reviews, Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb, all that stuff. Anything and everything that we feel would help sell the movie. Newspaper articles. Um, I won the Filmmaker of the Year award last year, so we were throwing that on here. I mean, really, just anything that helps, we had on that email, and including the offer. We want to do 50-50 ticket split. We're open to any day of the week that you would have us, and you know, hope to make a deal and hear from you, basically. And I would say probably like one out of every 10 to 15 emails we sent, we would get a response. Not every theater responds back. So then the following week, we would do a follow up email to all the ones we sent. And then maybe we get another 2 or 3 that would respond. And then after that, we do follow up phone calls, probably that same week, just later in the week on that second one, just to try to touch base by phone. And then we would pick up another 2 or 3 that way also. And so that was sort of our cycle, what we would do. It was email first, follow up email, and then phone call, then a follow up phone call. And so basically 4 waves. And that's how we got rolling on our contacts with theaters.
Yeah, so finding these theaters, is there any sort of like, independent theater directory, or, were you guys just like searching cities and finding the theaters and doing all of that detective work yourself?
For us, yeah, it was just a lot of detective work, you know, um, just Googling states, Texas independent theaters, whatever would pop up, we would reach out to them. We would do that for all the states that we were going to. For this trip, we were focusing on the Midwest. So we basically Texas and all the way up north central. So we're reaching out to all of those, by state, researching the cities, going onto those cities or those states, filmmaker groups, the Reddit groups, finding out where these theaters are. And so, yeah, there was definitely some research involved. But man, if you just Google it, I mean, it pops up pretty quickly, to be honest. And it's just doing a little bit of legwork on that end to find them. And that's what we did.
So, as the film is being screened, what was your marketing strategy in each of these cities to try to drive an audience to the movie?
Sure, I think obviously social media, I think every filmmaker uses, but you do need to use that. I already mentioned the different filmmaker groups for each city and state that they have. Just like San Antonio, we have our own. Those other cities have theirs as well. So we would reach out to those film groups, let them know we're coming. We'd love to see you there and support indie film. My film's a Sherlock movie, and so we reached out to a lot of the Sherlock groups as well on social media, including some of their websites, let them know we're coming, come watch our Sherlock film. And then we did reach out to universities as well. We got a little bit of a late start on that. That's something that should have been done much earlier. But reaching out to universities that teach film within those surrounding areas of where our movie would be showing, we would reach out to them as well to try to get that student body to come out and support. Um, Podcasts, we did a few podcasts in certain states and cities that we would be in, and target audience like advertising and marketing. We did that some as well. Maybe like $20 or $30. Target the city you're going to be in, things like that.
So was that Facebook ads or like what kind of marketing were you doing?
Yeah, it was Facebook ads and YouTube ads.
Okay. Did were you able to determine, kind of with analytics, figure out like how successful that was or whether it was working?
Um, yeah, that's kind of hard to find, to be honest, but I did find out that it was working just because someone told me it was. We were at a location and it's like, how'd you hear about it? It's like, oh, I saw an ad on Facebook. I'm like, that's cool. And so that it's nice to know that it did work, and that the ad was reaching these target areas because a lot of times you're like, I don't know if this is going to work or not. What is 20 or $30 going to do? But it did. The guy told me straight up that's where he found it and saw it. Um, so that's good. It's great to know.
Yeah. Um, so what are some of the things that maybe filmmakers would not know about what it takes to get into theaters? Like I know there must be some specific requirements for the film QC, that kind of stuff. Like what are the things that we don't know but should?
Yeah, so I think for the movie theaters, um, if you're going to go with a distribution company, a lot of them, to my knowledge, are going to want the insurance. The oh my gosh, I'm blanking.
E&O,
Yeah,
errors and omissions. Yeah.
correct. Um, they're going to want that if you're using a distribution company to get your film out. Now, self-distribution, theaters don't ask for that. That's not their problem. Yeah, if someone sues you or whatever, that's not their problem. It's not their film, and so they don't even worry about that. So, but if you're going to use a distribution company, you want it to go worldwide and all that stuff, they're going to want that, which some filmmakers may not know. Um, you're going to have to get your film DCP, digital cinema package, for the ones that don't know what that is. That normally runs anywhere from $800 to $1,200, depending on who you're using. I suggest using a company that has access to send your film to all these theaters across the US and across the world. Not all these companies do. So Cube Cinema is who I use, and they have access to all, at least the US theaters, either digitally or they'll send the hard copy. There are DCP companies that don't do that. They just DCP your film and then they give it to you. Well, that doesn't help me get it to the theaters, so I highly suggest finding a DCP company that can do both. Okay. All I have to do is email my contact. Hey, I'm going to be showing it at this theater in Tulsa. Awesome, CJ. We'll send it out tomorrow. Done. That's very nice for a filmmaker because we already have to do so much. And the company I've been using, Cube Cinema, to this point, they've been great. I haven't had any issues. The film gets to the theaters on time, and everything's been good. Um, so that's another avenue that you definitely need to know. Um, Another thing that's kind of interesting, if you're doing self-distribution with the theaters, they don't do contracts. It's all just by email. It blows my mind. I couldn't believe it when I first started doing this. So you don't want to see my movie, and there's no contracts. It just feels like a huge scam. Like it's just like there's no way this is true. There's no way Hollywood. This is not how it works. But it is. It is how it works. It's insane to me, but that's how it works. Now the big studios are a little bit different, but for us, it's just emails. And it's the same thing with the booking company. Their email is, I guess, in their eyes, the binding contract or whatever you want to call it. But it's not even that. It's very weird, man. But to this point, I don't want to like scare anyone. Um, Although it's been through emails, I haven't had any issues. The film's gotten to where it needs to be. They played my movie. I've been paid. That's another thing that people need to realize is that 50-50 ticket split, that's what it is. I'm not paying the theater anything. There's no upsell, no upfront cost. And so if you're distributing and they're like, well, we need, you know, a couple $100 for this theater to show your movie. No,
Don't do it.
don't go down that route. Theaters will do a 50-50 ticket split with no cost to you. The only thing that's going to cost you money is getting your film to the theater, which is the DCP. And that typically runs anywhere from like $20 to $40, depending if it's digital or a hard copy.
Gotcha. So, what is next for the film?
Well, for part one, I am looking into distribution companies. Um, it's a hard avenue, but I've been researching a lot because I want the film to go worldwide. I still want it to go in theaters. And for me, the only way I can do that is to have a distribution company help me get it to those countries. Like I'm not to that point where I can do that. The US, yeah, I can self distribute myself and tour with the movie forever, if I wanted to. Um, but I have other projects that I have to get going on and need to get finished. So, although I am very cautious about distribution companies, and I've never gone with one to this point, if I want to get to that worldwide theatrical, I think it's the only other step that I can do. And so I'm looking into that right now. And I already have distribution companies that are interested, and I'm, doing private screenings with my movie, and we'll see what their type of deals are, things of that nature.
Yeah, how are you vetting the distribution companies?
I'm sorry.
How are you, doing your research and trying to figure out like what's, who's going to give you a good deal and who's going to screw you over?
Sure. Yeah. Um, I know. I don't think it's ever going to be 100% where it's like I'm not going to get screwed over. I don't think that's ever going to happen, unfortunately. But what I tell filmmakers is basically go onto IMDb. If you're a filmmaker that are making features, I highly suggest being on IMDb Pro. That way you can really look at the contacts. You'll see their emails, their phone numbers, everyone, distribution companies, sales reps, all that stuff, booking agencies. So for Sherlock Holmes, I try to find films that are kind of similar. So for me, I started researching, what Michael Levy and Damien did, like with the Terrifier films. Who do they go with on distribution? And if you go on their IMDb and see, they actually have probably 20 different distribution companies, one for each territory around the world, which is another thing I suggest. Don't just do one company for everything. If you can slice it up, if one screws you over, 19 don't, that's much better. But finding some films like the Terrifier franchise, the Winnie the Pooh horror film 1 and 2, um, that Screamboat film that just came out, those type of films are kind of like mine. Like everyone knows who Winnie the Pooh is. You know, people know who Peter Pan is. There's that Grinch one that came out. So I'm like, okay, these distribution companies like using characters that people know, and they're also horror films. Mine's kind of like that. Let me see who they used and reach out to these companies. And that's what I've done up to this point. And they're now screening my film actually as I speak. And I'm supposed to be hearing back from them next week to see what they think about the film and what they can do. But the beauty about a lot of those films too is you can see their budgets. You can also see what they did worldwide on the theatrical tour. So if you don't know that Winnie the Pooh film, I think it's the second one. Well, it made $7 million at the theatrical box office on distribution, and I feel like my film is just as good as that movie. When it comes to visually and audio and acting and all that stuff. Storytelling, it's different. My story's not like that. Mine's a much darker, serious take drama. Theirs is let's have fun with Winnie the Pooh and go kill a bunch of people. So it's different.
Mm-hmm.
So the distribution company may not take it on because it's more of a serious film. I don't know. I'll find out. And if that's the case, you go back to the drawing board and you try to find other films that are a little bit more serious in that budget range and see what they've done. But there's so many different avenues, man. Like that's just one that I'm trying to take. Another one is oh my goodness. A lot of religious films use it. Oh man, I think it's connected with AMC. I've gone blank on it, but some type of event. Oh well.
Oh, wow.
I can't remember.
No
But
worries.
doing my research with them, to my knowledge, they only gave like 10 to 20%
Mhm.
of the ticket revenue to the filmmaker. Oh, it's Fathom Events. Fathom Events. And so Fathom Events, they will release your film for like 2 or 3 days and almost every AMC theater across the country, which can be up to close to 2,000 theaters, I think. And it's a great way to get your film out there. But if your movie makes 10 million, you're only going to see maybe 10% or maybe even less. Like I've heard great things about you getting paid from Fathom. Um, I could be wrong, but every director I've reached out to, which has been about four of them that have used Fathom events, has told me that. Um, Now, if you want exposure, they say it's great. They'll do the work, they'll get it out there. If you're looking to make a lot of money, that's probably not going to happen. And for the most part, they don't do too much horror. It's mainly the religious films or series or sporting events, things of that nature. In fact, the ones I was talking to were more on the religious side, and they would even share me their contacts because they were like, "There's no way they're going to take your movie because it's horror, and there's sex in it, and that's
Yeah.
not what they kind of look at." So I'm like, "All right." So they like more of the Hallmark religious type stuff, but that's another avenue.
Yeah, there's definitely a market for that for sure.
Yeah.
So, leave us with your best advice for someone who is a filmmaker thinking about making a feature.
Well, I always tell everyone, if you're gonna make a film, just make the film that you want to see. You're gonna spend at least probably 3 years, if not longer, of your life making this movie and promoting it and selling it and all those things. So do that. You're gonna have to learn not to let the negativity and reviews hurt you. Everyone sees film differently. Not everyone's gonna like it. That's just how it is. So get over that, like out of the gate, and you'll be much better off. So it doesn't affect you. It doesn't affect me at all, and I
Wait,
hopefully film it.
are you telling me that not everybody on the planet is going to love my movie?
That's true, man. I
Damn it.
hate to break it to you. You know, it's just gonna happen. So they need to know that. Um, Besides that, on a technical level, audio, it's everything. Please make sure your audio is stellar. And then just be patient. I think a lot of filmmakers try to rush out their projects or their films because they want people to see it. If you're a filmmaker, you're not in it for quick fame. All right. If you want quick fame, go do TikTok videos or YouTube videos. Filmmakers, that's not what it is. Filmmakers, it's a love for the art and making movies. It's a grind. It's, like I said, at least 3 years every day working on it, thinking about it. And it can be brutal, but it can also be very beautiful. It's an awesome experience to see something that you've written and created and brought together hundreds of people to make a film. Um, and you create a lot of, or you accomplish a lot of goals and dreams, not just for yourself, but for others. And, it's a beautiful thing. But it takes almost 3 years to accomplish. So just be patient, make what you want to make, and don't let the negativity affect you in any way. That's really all I can say without talking another 5 hours of you know what you really need to do on a technical level and all these things.
Yeah. Yeah. Making a movie is no joke. CJ, it's been terrific having you on. Really appreciate you sharing everything that you've learned about filmmaking. It's been a pleasure. That is it for the Texas Indie Film Podcast. I am Rob Mabry. Go make a movie. That's it for this week's episode of the Texas Indie Film Podcast. Don't forget to follow, like, and comment. And if you're a filmmaker from the Lone Star State and you'd like to be a guest on the show, contact Texas Indie Film on Facebook, Instagram, or email at texasindiefilm@gmail.com.